Friends, in this class I'm going to discuss with you the second poem of Flamingo, an elementary school classroom in a slum. But before moving to this poem, let's discuss the difference between paragraph and stanza. You are familiar with paragraph, but are you really familiar with stanza? Stanza, stanza, which is also called verse, verse, and these two things, that is stanza or verse. It's find in you may found these two terms in terms of poetry. Now the question arises that what's the difference between the two? What's the difference between a paragraph and a stanza? A paragraph may be found in a literary piece which is called a prose. Newspaper articles, everything in a newspaper, it's called prose. So there you find paragraph. In a story book, in science book, in geography book, in history book, you find paragraphs. And many other books other than the book of poetry, you will find paragraph everywhere. And a stanza, stanza, or verse, verse, you find stanza or verse in poetry only. So the part of a poetry divided into different sections, that is called stanza. Now let's come to the second poem of Flamingo, and why I had started with stanza and paragraph, the difference between the two, because the first poem which you have studied, My Mother at 66, that poem doesn't have any stanza or any part because it's written in just one paragraph, not paragraph, but only one verse or only one stanza. Now, in this poem, that is the second poem, you will find a different parts which is called stanza or verse. So please don't call the different part of a poem into paragraph. You have to call it stanza. It's not paragraph, it's a stanza. Now, I hope this one is very clear to you. What's the difference between a stanza and paragraph? Let's discuss the lines from the second poem of Flamingo. We'll discuss the first paragraph, that is called verse or stanza. So please keep in mind, time and again I'm saying this to remind you the fact that the different parts of a poem is called stanza or verse and not paragraph. Far from gusty webs, these children's faces like rootless weeds, the hair torn round their pallor, the tall girl with her weighed down head, the paper simming boy with rat's eyes, the stunted unlucky heir of twisted bones reciting a father's gnarled disease. Unlucky one, his lesson from his desk at back of the dim classroom, one unnoted, sweet and young, his eyes live in a dream of squirrel's game in tree room other than this. So you will find these things in the poem. You will find that the school, which is called an elementary school classroom in a slum, it's situated in a place which is very far away from the gusty waves. Now the question arises that what is gusty waves? You may have seen traffic when cars or when trucks or when other vehicles move on the road, they create gusty waves. But the slum area, the place where the school is situated, you'll find that this place is very far away from the din and bustle of a city, from the traffics of the city, and you'll find that these children faces the faces of the children studying in the elementary school classroom, you'll feel the faces, the skin of the students which study in this school. You'll find that it's dry. It's as dry as leaf. It's as dry as rootless weeds. So, in the first place, the very first line, the very first three words, far, far from gusty waves, you may have found the use of alliteration in this line. Far, far from, the repetition of the F sound words, the repetition of F in the first line shows that the poet has used alliteration. And as I have discussed with you, that Stephen Spender is the poet of this poetry, this poem. So, Stephen Spender has used the alliteration in the very first line, and in the very second line you'll find that like rootless weeds, these children's faces like rootless weeds, means these children's faces are compared with rootless weeds means, weeds means the unwanted plants are called weeds. In Hindi, we call it Kharpatwar. In English, we call it WIDS, WEEDS. So these boys and girls sitting there in the primary school classroom of a slum area, they are like rootless weeds. The society does not have anything to do with these children. They are ignored, they are marginalized, and they are nothing to do with the mainstream of the society. So that's why they are compared using the word like with rootless weeds. Means they are like rootless weeds. They don't value for the society, for the people of society. They are like rootless weeds. Their faces are dry because of malnutrition, because of the lack of nutrition in their diet. So these children are not as dynamic, these children are not as smart, as handsome as you find the children of private schools, English medium schools. Because this school is not a private school, but this school is situated in slum area. Thank you. In the next class, we'll discuss the next thing.